Burnout is a concept that's at the core of my entire thesis. And it's something that is talked about a lot currently as almost like a boogeyman lurking around the corner of our work and our relationship to work if we like enact this practice of having bad boundaries. If we look at how it's used most commonly, or at least most colloquially, burnout is a psychological term that addresses mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion connected to repeated experiences of stress or of work beyond boundaries, etc. I'm really interested in how we can take burnout as a psychological term and apply it to movement spaces and look at it as this thing called activist burnout. I'm going to use Dean Spade's definition of burnout in his book Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next, published in 2020, as a jumping off point for what I'm really interested in. So, his definition of burnout is the combination of resentment, exhaustion, shame, and frustration that makes us lose connection to pleasure and passion in the work and instead encounter difficult feelings like avoidance, compulsion, control, and anxiety. After this definition, he provides a bunch of solutions for like preventing burnout in activist spaces, such as looking within the movement or organization itself to see what the dynamics are, building in space for rest, onboarding new people immediately so that other people are able to take rests if needed, and making sure people feel connected within the movement space itself. However, at the core of what he's talking about, Dean Spade defines burnout as connected to as similar to what a lot of popular psychological articles say, which is connected to this lack of boundaries when it comes to work, whether that be movement work or a job. I'm really interested in burnout as a collective term and what we can gain from changing our mindset on that. And this is something that Dean Spade touches on, but isn't at the core of his definition of burnout and how to prevent it. So if we look at burnout as a collective term or as a collective experience, we can see that because of the interlocking systems of capitalism, settler colonialism, white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, and queer and transphobia that we all exist in, marginalized people, and in this case especially Black and brown and Asian, queer and trans disabled people, are constantly bombarded by stress just through existence in these oppressive systems, but also in a bunch of different spaces, especially as femmes being forced to do emotional labor beyond the boundaries that you have. And as Mia Mingus talks about in her blog post Edges on her blog Leaving Evidence, it's more the way that any kind of space, whether that be an activist space or a workspace or a social scene, requires disabled people to constantly push beyond their edges, beyond their boundaries, in order to participate, in order to build connections with people, in order to be able to do the work in movement spaces or wherever. So this idea that it's simply like a lack of boundaries is very reductive and introduces this concept of shame as connected to burnout. However, I don't think that burnout is just something that you need to be really worried about and prevent. I think that burnout isn't preventable. It's inevitable. As marginalized people who are in these systems of oppression all the time, it is inevitable that we will experience this kind of deep exhaustion and pain that comes from being burnt out of all of the work that we do and all of the spaces that we inhabit. If we look at burnout as collective and inevitable, we have to be able to move through it instead of trying to just prevent it, and once burnout happens, just throwing some vacation time at it.